Think I'm live. All right. Greetings, everybody. Everyone that decided to come to this rather unique live here over the Star movie, which is something unique. And I can't believe that I was actually kind of pushed by Spirit and them being the star beings into doing this, which is interesting. And anyway, can everybody hear me first before I even get started? Can everybody hear me? Welcome, Millie, Rory, Atma, uh, Urso. So a few people here. Wow, cool. I didn't know if anybody would show up for this, but it was a cool movie. So everybody can hear me loud and clear. Thank you. Okay, right on, right on, right on. All right, well, we just have a little bit of a storm going on here, so things are a little fuzzy, but hopefully this will hold out to where we can communicate and get this done. All right. Um, uh, Something about this, why I'm kind of doing this, and again, I thank everybody for coming, is that I was urged to do this by the star beings, by spirit. And honestly, that's how a lot of that, my whole YouTube channel, this whole YouTube channel came to be. The videos that are, a lot of times I get pushed by spirit to make it about this or about that. So I just do it, with knowledge already possessed from something I've researched or experienced. And I would just go forward with that. I never wanted to do that YouTube channel. And anybody that really knows me, especially my friend PC that recorded all those, know that I never wanted to ever do that. He pushed me for a long time before we actually got even the first video up there. So much credit to him. But then there was something that happened when Spirit started taking over and saying, wanting this and that done. So I went with the flow. You know what I mean? That's why the YouTube channel stands as a small library of quick reference videos for anybody who might want them. And it's about the people that are trying to do their own thing and expand their own consciousness. It's certainly not about me. I just have the fortune to be able to present some of the material. So anyway, being pushed about this movie, Starman. And what I'm going to do is I've got some things I want to point out about it. Then I'll go to chat and interact completely with the chat. That's kind of the method that I use because y'all know I get too excited when I start going over points and stuff. And I start missing a bunch of stuff and all sorts of things happen. So I'll do that. Then I will comment a little bit because I want everybody's perspective. I remember when this movie came out, it was 84, and it took it a while. I think it came out a year or so later because it was delayed because of ET. And there was some competition going on. And that was, that early 80s was a lot of extraterrestrial movies. Isn't that interesting? And when I say that, it's the extraterrestrial movies of either they were coming hostile species or they were coming to enslave us normally, or it's the lone extraterrestrial stranded. And that seemed to be a theme that came up quite a bit back then. So Starman was interesting in that way. Now, I will tell you, what caught my attention at that age when that movie came out is when we'll talk about the whole process of this movie, but how he dropped those balls and he operated with those metal spears that look like quote unquote steelies is what my dad always used to call them when we would play marbles. But I was always attracted to those because I had seen those before. Now take away the glowing thing and all that, the Hollywood effect, but those balls themselves, I've seen them before in this school. It's like this school that this room I was in when I was a kid several times, and there were things that would have you do on the table, and there was no teacher in there, quote unquote, but there's somebody in there psychically with you, mentally, telepathically. But the thing you had to do was move the feather. That was the first thing. There was a bowl of water. You have to stir the water with your mind. Then the third thing is you have these balls. There was 4 of them. He dropped 7 of them. But I remember 4 of these balls, and they levitated, but they didn't glow. Okay, but I mean, I've heard other people describe that now too, and it became a masterful if you could start floating all 4 of them, then maybe 5, and start putting them in arranges and things like that, like they're anti-gravity, but it was telekinesis that did it. Anyway, so it's interesting how many people remember going through something like that. But that, as a kid, attracted me to that movie when I saw him using those balls. Okay, so fair off. The other thing would be this. I was always obsessed. They used Voyager 2, 19 set launched in was it August 10th, I think, 1977. But they used that as the contact satellite that this movie was kind of based on. And what's fascinating about that is I was always obsessed with, especially in childhood, with Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11, launched around the time I was born, just before. Okay, and people never talk about those two. And Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 went way out there. They're way gone past the heliosphere now, most likely. Pioneer 10's last communication was 123:03, and Pioneer 11's last communication was after it left the orbit of Neptune, 11:24:95. That's fascinating. But anyway, those are things that are still out there floating in space. And I know some people had issues with this movie because when it starts off, it's the Voyager 2 coming in. It's playing, what's that, Satisfaction from the Rolling Stones. And that's kind of in the way it was opened up after that, and the way it was planned is not exactly the way any of those probes were done. So people were complaining about that. It's a movie, all right. It's not going to be perfect, but they're trying to give you an idea of something. And I really think the idea of this is true. I think something like this has happened. And I pick up a lot like Clifford Stone. And I think it's something that like he had went through. He described several retrievals involving beings. And I think one of them might be somewhat similar to this. And this is what this is based off of, I believe. And so there's a thing of why Spirit wants me to go over this movie. I said, and maybe push me for a minute. Do a live over Starman. Do a live over Starman. I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. That's just, but there's a point behind it, I believe, anyway. So let's start off with what really I think is noteworthy, as I don't like the term Easter eggs, but things that are really noteworthy as far as little truths that are in this movie, I think, that are hidden, and a type of disclosure in plain day. All right, and it was done that way. So a lot of this movie was about being a love story. Look, folks, you can throw onions at me, but I'm really not into the love story stuff. I'm just not that, brother. Okay, it is what it is, I guess. But so that's what a lot of this was about. But outside of that, it was a fact that the individual got invited here and then got blasted. And when you see the Voyager 2 probe going out there and going to this thing, a lot of people have always said, oh, it went to a planet out there. No, that wasn't a planet. That was a ship. It was a mothership. And more than that, it was a metal ship that was reflective, highly reflective. So it looked black because it's reflecting space only. And at the other later in that movie, when the ship came to get him at the very end, you notice it's reflecting the desert and everything around it, as opposed to being a black or even just metallic. So that's one thing. And he had the metallic spears. Also, when it launched the probe, okay, the probe was also a spear, his scout ship. And, I think I have the ability now to show pictures. I think I know how to do it. Jessica Jones had showed me. So I think I know how to do that. So I'll show some pictures later. But his scout ship, to me, looked remarkably similar to the ship on Smallville that brought Clark here. And look, if you get online, if you actually just look both those up on Google, look how similar those ships look. I think that's fascinating. Not the same prop, but they look very close. Anyway, up on being invited here, of course, he got bombed down by nuclear. So there's a couple of things that showed here. One is that when they showed the inside of the craft, as they're kind of coming up, examining the Voyager craft, and the thing's opening up. But if you look in there, notice similar to when they recovered during the movie, the probe that they shot down, it was hollow inside, and then the dude got in there and found the record in there that was from the Voyager probe. But outside of that, if you noticed in there quickly what they showed, there was no noticeable technology. It was more looked like some type of molded metal. And the same would be the outside. All right. Now, when Starman crashed, when he got gunned down, it's kind of a cold-blooded deal, because it's kind of like, okay, somebody, I invite you over for dinner. All right. I say, come over for some dinner. You come on over. And as soon as you walk in and shut the door, I shut the door, and then I start just sticking it to you. You know what I mean? They blow you up. That's pretty much what that was. Invitation to come here and check us out and how to find us. And then as soon as somebody comes, they get shot down immediately. And when he was communicating back, he said his observational craft was destroyed, an emergency transmission. So anyway, point being, when he actually emerged from that crash, he was a blue light. Okay. A blue light that seemed to be consistent, but it was levitating, floating over the lake on over to her crib, and started checking out the inside of her crib, even watching the videos and things. All right. So that was just interesting. One, that it was represented as a blue light being always caught my attention, because I always had seen blue flashes, and these blue beings were consistently in all my encounters. All right. So that caught my attention both then, and especially when I got older and started having those adult onset experiences. And what I was going to show you is one of those pictures of those eggs. Okay. Those eggs on that craft, and I'm sorry, I should have this pulled up or already in my hand, and I don't. The eggs that I've described on board the craft, inside are these different configurations, and some of them look like plasma, some of them were blue, some of them were different colors, some yellow, some look like condensed light, and these eggs were all over this ship. So let me... There's one. It's not the one I used. Boy, sorry, I should have. There it is, finally. Almost the very last thing. Of course, it couldn't be simplistic. Sorry. Okay, it's this one. Sorry, I'll try not to do that again during this live. This craft here. These eggs were on all over every room in this ship. Okay, and it's got those lights in there. Okay, and I've said before, I thought these were power sources at first. But I noticed how these beings are all paying attention to these eggs too. They're really tuned into them. And then later, when two of these things emerged and helped me, I figured that they were actually what might be command officers. I don't know. But they're beings from a different dimension, a different universe or whatever, but where this part of the ship, this glass egg, is actually a path of coherency to their universe, or wherever they're from. That's why that mist is in there. That's why they didn't come out of there much either. So I think the place that I could exist on the ship along with them was actually very painful for them in that way. That's what I believe anyway. Wasn't told that. Anyway, for that reason alone, though, the way Starman appears, I think, is very interesting, okay? So we're dealing with a non-corporeal being. And from what I was seeing of the technology, the way he used the balls and everything, I believe that Starman species was supposed to be photoelectric. I think that's what they were showing us, that there was a photoelectric species. Okay, then he does the thing when he opens up this thing that they have the ability of mental telekinesis over moving objects and things, psychokinetic moving things, and also especially electronics. He seemed to be able to activate electronics even after he did the transformation. And when that thing opened up, it went in. At first, it did a 3D hologram of Jeff Bridges, whoever that dude was, and then it goes into the hair and starts going into all the way down to the helix of the DNA, and then does what we would call rapid cloning immediate. And that kind of suggestion is pretty advanced for that year. Some of that stuff came out in the 60s too, advanced stuff about cloning, but that's always interesting that they represented. There's no CGI back then, so it's a little weak, but I mean, it's supposed to be instantaneous before that woman's face, before her eyes, he turned from, a baby into a man, and it looked like him based on that holographic overlay he had taken. So I thought that was just kind of interesting. And then the way he dropped those balls, so whatever it was with the transformation from this non-corporeal photoelectric light or energy type of being into the process of being human, as he had called it on there when he sent the transmission off to say he needed to be caught, he needed to be picked up at that meteor place in Arizona in 3 days, and the ship was destroyed and the environment was very hostile. But he called it symbiotic transformation, that rapid cloning he did. So I think that's pretty worthy too of information. Anyway, going forward, some things that he had said about his civilization later on when she asked him about what it was like there. He was saying, "Oh, it's beautiful like it is here, but it's different." And he said that we have one religion, one language, one race, one like everything, and that they were extremely civilized, but that they had lost something. That they had lost the ability that there wasn't like Earth in terms of we're all so different, and we've got all so different of everything here, and it's not like that there. But when you really want to take a different frame of reference, I think the little, what do you want to call it, Easter egg, whatever in there, is that they're really describing to you what a civilization would be like of beings that are non-corporeal to a degree. What would it really be like on the conscious level, and also not having the thing he kept saying over and over again. And this goes over into the Starman TV series also. I hadn't mentioned that yet, sorry. Starring that guy at, oh gosh, what's his name? When I was a kid, he was on this TV show called Angie. And then a few years after that, he was Stryker on Airplay. Yeah. Oh, Ted Stryker. Yeah. That's the two things I always remember him as Stryker. But he played Starman in a different body in Starman the series. And I'm telling you, I'm just going to be real with you. I watched a few of them just to prepare for this. Man, it's weak. Oh, it was weak. I thought it was weak, but it was weak. And they never tell where Starman is from, not either on the movie or during the series. He never says where he's from. He points out a star to her at one point. Oh, it's that one there. But I mean, they don't never actually say where he's from. All right. And I think that takes us into another area also of beings that do come from not just these quantum holograms, but beings that come from consciousness as well, that we experience during these contact scenarios. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. Anyway, they're describing to us what a civilization would be like that. There's certain things that come to mind since we're using entertainment references. One of my favorite Star Treks, the originals, is the one where, oh gosh, I should know the name of it. The beings are named Organians, and the Enterprise goes there because the Klingons is closed in on this planet, and this planet is very kind of primitive, like farmer type of civilization, pre-colonial type, and they're all peaceful. They're at peace though, and there's this council, and Kirk is in there talking to the council, and they're all looking at him like that, and then he's telling them, "These are Klingons. They will kill you. They will do this." And every time he's talking to them, they're going like this. They're like that when he's talking and stuff. And later on, it turns out that they're like these light beings, and that they say we used to be like you, but we evolved beyond that millions of years ago, and no one's died here in a long time. And they stopped the entire Federation army and the Klingon Empire also everywhere. They stopped the whole thing, and they was tripping on them, saying, "You don't have a right. You have a right." And he's saying, "What? You're defending the right to destroy murder on a galactic scale?" I think, but the fact is that when it's over, Spock was saying, they started saying, we don't mean to be inhospitable, but just being in the presence of beings like yourselves is extremely painful to us. And Kirk is looking, "What do you mean beings like ourselves? What?" And then that's when they showed him what they were. And it was done, and Spock was like, "Pure energy." And, that's what I think this is cool, because it takes us to a concept. What happens to us as a species, humanity, if we don't wipe ourselves out? when we become actually non-corporeal and start becoming things like high energy plasma and evolve to that type of a container for our consciousness. What will happen? What will our civilization be like then? You know, when you can still affect things enough to make a craft, like you start looking at the Starman, both the mother craft and the craft he was in, like I said, it looks more like it's made to sustain those conscious photoelectric beings. Okay. I think I just rumbled on enough about that. Oh, something else. When they the wreckage and the craft, the scout probe that they destroyed, they commented that it emitted no radiation and it had no bacteria of any type either. Okay, so I think that's another reason I would estimate when Starman first came out of that, when the being first came out of the craft, he probably started dying immediately. And I would imagine it would be due to, one, the way that the craft had, when it picked him up, had displayed the red beam, that nano spectrum, all right, and it made everything start snowing. That kind of implies it could be something from a blue star, something of that nature, where you've got extremely cold temperatures and infrared type of maybe photoelectric creatures that are interesting. When you start dealing with the photoelectric, it can start emitting a ton. When it's concentrated, it emits tons of electrons from a metal. It can happen. And that's what he was doing. But he also showed something, all right? He showed the ability with those balls, was what he had 7 balls. And y'all that watched the movie, and you know now, the first one he used to send the transmission to say, hey, help me get the hell out of here. All right. And number 2 would be the second one he uses. He's in the car and he shows her a map saying, I need to go there where that crater was. Okay. The third he used to kind of scare the dude that was coming at him with a crowbar, and he blew something up behind him and made the crowbar go on fire. Okay. The fourth one he used to heal that deer. That deer was dead. It'd been dead. He went out there and healed it and sent it off to the woods, and then got beat down for it. Hey, whooped his ass, man. But anyway, sorry. Oh, anyway, sorry. But so he healed. That was like the fourth one he used, was to heal that deer. Then they had the crash. He used one to get them through that. Okay. Then she got shot. He used that one to heal her. And the last one he gave to her for the baby. All right. But he said if he didn't go when they came, if they left without him, he was going to die. Anyway, is what he said. But when you start dealing with photoelectric and those electrons that could emit from a piece of metal like that, that's, I think, what we're dealing with a little bit of special effects. All right. Anyway, the fact that he showed the ability with her, and if you remember, he was healing her, and his arm was almost looked like a disco light on there. But it starts taking us in the realm of old Preston Dennett's books, okay? UFO healings. I told you this was a life-changing book for me back in the 90s when I got my hands on this. This described experiences, something like what I was going through, which were positive. I wasn't hearing about that stuff anywhere. And he's got this other book, and he posted something on Facebook saying that this was his best-selling book or something like that. Something really cool about it. This is a healings one either. And he's got, this one's even more thick. It's full of people that have had healings during their encounters. And we don't hear about that. We don't hear about that. And it's still, I mean, so I came forward in 2014 talking about this kind of stuff, and very few people were. And now it's increased not that much. You got Ray Hernandez, and I mean, it's really fascinating. But we can hear all about SSP, all my respect to people who've been through that trauma. We hear about that type of encounters. We hear about all the negative stuff, okay? The cloning, all that stuff, which this show does demonstrate to a degree, okay? But I mean, we don't hear about these healings that go on. All right, there's all sorts of them that happen. I've seen people being healed. And like, I still talk about that experience because it wasn't physical. But I was on board this craft, and I seen like people on these beds phased out, and this light coming down, hitting them that looked like, and it was like the light looked like almost spider webs. silk like. There's some sort of healing going on the astral level. You've got that engine that I showed you, that being told me could heal human flesh. It just made that type of a sound, that crystalline engine that I've showed before. I'm not going to try to kill myself by going through all those pictures. Anyway, just that part of this movie, the fact that he seemed to have the ability to reverse the death process was pretty heavy, I thought. It's kind of like what is it? Isn't that how Palpatine got Anakin Skywalker? There is only one that knew how to reverse death, and just stuff like that. So I mean, yeah. Anyway, it's fascinating to me, that concept, because it also takes into something else I won't spend any time talking about. But show that I talked about a lot when I was younger, that I watched when I was younger, it's called Under the Mountain. It should be on Nickelodeon, but it was out of New Zealand, written by oh God, what's his name? Morris Gee, I think is his name. Anyway, really good. But the thing had a deal that was Mr. Jones, who was the alien that had come to Earth to battle these Wilberforces, and also was dealing with these twins. What he actually really looked like was a green light. And he was able to take human form, but he is this green light. And he said he came here from another galaxy, but he's two of them, and it was too long. He said it's a very long way, and my friend died. It was too long for him. But in fact, he's talking about using the light being body, their Merkaba, to actually project himself clear across extragalactic space to come here. And so I thought that was a pretty good, and that way it's this similarity that I was seeing between that and Starman. I think if Starman didn't do the biological symbiotic cloning, he wouldn't have made it. It wouldn't just, he told her, I made myself look like this so I wouldn't make you a little bit jumpy. But I don't think in the other form he could exist here that long like that. So the symbiotic deal had to be taken on. Anyway, all right, I'm almost done, y'all. We'll do some talking here. Something that he said also, he said that he made maps. You remember that? He kept saying that he made maps. That tells you the cat was some observation craft. He was responding to the deal. So that's somebody, and also he had told them that they had been here before. We have an interesting species, so they've been observing us for a while. Then pretty much we reached out and he got blasted. You know, that's part of that, and I think that's so much more true. He said they had no war on this planet, no hunger, one people, but they're very civilized, but they had lost something. And it's that they don't have the diversity we have here on Earth. And also he had said something else, and this is on the series, this came out also, and this is vital. He said he'd never felt anything before until he cloned one of these human bodies, and the body was feeling. And he was tripped out on apple pie and all that corny stuff they were throwing in there. But in reality, the point they're trying to make is that he had said that, and I think they emphasized that on the series too. They said he never felt anything before. So he no feelings. So whatever the other container is there is limited in terms of physical sensations of feeling. That's very interesting. But he said that they sang. He said that they asked him if they sang. He said, yeah, we sing. Because he was singing. He was singing in the deal when she woke up. She said, did they sing where you come from? We sing. So interesting. So the singing, I guess, with minimum emotion, kind of like Vulcan like deal. I don't know. It's just food for thought I'm throwing out there for you, because I think this is pertinent. If we're going to become a type 1 civilization, we got to get over just thinking about the reptiles, thinking about the grays, and thinking about beings that are physical. We have others that are non-physicals. I've told you about it. I've been on craft with some of these beings that are non-corporeal that I think can't even exist here on this earth at all. And I think that's what we're dealing here with this being and what they were trying to portray that. And that's the kind of secret type of Easter egg, whatever the hell you call it in there. Anyway, sorry. He had said to the guy that came around from SETI, that little guy that I kept thinking that was Neelix, but it's not the same actor. Boy, they look a lot alike for some reason. Anyway, he said that how many intelligent yet savage races there are in the galaxy, like us. So that's I think that's pretty. You have to be a psychic or a movie producer to figure that out, but I think it's something good that they threw in there. um, the part that we also know that his tech was susceptible to nuclear attack. So I think not just on the photoelectric aspect are we dealing with, but also we're dealing with some type of life energy that we're containing also. So it's not just the electric universe and things like that, but there's a life energy they were dealing with. That's how he was able to heal stuff. So I think that's a part of it too, and why that energy was too much to store in the human body, and why some of them came out in those spears like that. Okay, that's my opinion on that anyway. I think that's just what they wanted me to relay is stuff like that. And those of us that may have had contact with beings that are somewhat like that, as him in his in his natural form, and his contact experiences we're unaware of because it happens in the dreamscape for a lot of us. That's where those beings can meet us halfway and use the phantasmagorical images of our dreams and those electron impulses to communicate with us and get halfway and closer. So anyway, and no, I don't think he was plasma either. I don't think he was a plasma being. I didn't see any type of any signs of that, of more of a plasma technology. It looked like it was more like photolight. Anyway, photoelectric. But anyway, that's it for that. That's mostly what I wanted to say about that movie. I think when the series tried to act like it was a continuation, but it was missing a lot. Okay, like what happened with the kid and how him came back, and it was just not a very good show. I'm sorry. And not like the movie was good, but the TV series didn't quite hold up. So I'm gonna look over here now real quick and see what's going on. This is one of the deal. I've got my deal going back here, so it's gonna go off so I don't go way long. Like the last time I did pretty good. It was only like an hour and 20 minutes, but the other ones, those 3-hour lives were crazy. People that are in the sun don't eat much. So check this out. Oh, better. Excuse me. Something about people in the sun not eating much. Not just as melanin dominant beings do we convert sunlight to melt to vitamin D, but when dealing with entertainment again in that era, there was a show on Channel 10, ABC, that was called The Phoenix, and it starred Judson Scott. Judson Scott played, you might remember him from V. He was one of the reptiles and was eating the eating the rats. Or he also played Khan's first, or his son, in Star Trek 2. He popped up on other things, but those are ones he would be most well known for. Anyway, he played an extraterrestrial alien called Bennu. And Bennu had come back, and now they were supposed to be, he was supposed to be from Aldebaran, I believe. It was Aldebaran. That's the first time you've seen beings represented as being from Aldebaran, but they were supposed to have been here in Egyptian times. And he came back to find his mate who was entombed somewhere, but supposedly still alive. And here's why I'm bringing this up. The thing about Bennu is that he had this, they called this show The Phoenix because he had this metal medallion. And the medallion had this big phoenix on it, all right? And he would use it and charge it with the sun. And it gave him the ability to have all these psychokinetic abilities, energy blasts, all sorts of stuff he could do, even increase his telepathy and everything. And he was saying in one of the episodes, where I come from, we have different ways of using the sun. And he was telling the people the different nanospectrums they could use to make things grow and different things like that. And in one of the episodes, he told the woman, he said, this thing, that necklace, it's like a generator. It's an accumulator, a generator of types. That's what we do where I come from. So that was just interesting in terms of that really revolved around beings that use the sun. And that is a type 1 civilization. They start using the sun as the main power source, where we should evolve to next, as we're still type 0. We're still using fossil fuels. So just something interesting to throw in there. Another one of those 80s show. The Phoenix went on for, man, that was like maybe a season. I think they're like 6 or 7 episodes. If you go to YouTube and type in the Phoenix 1980s show, it'll come up. You can view all of them for free. First through one through 5 or 6. That's about all there was, man. Maybe 6 episodes. Anyway, sorry. But it's cool because I like using entertainment as frame of reference, because I have from a past life one of those memories. If I see a TV show or a movie once, I can remember almost every line from every actor in that entire movie. And when I was a kid, it was like hell because, when HBO and Showtime and Cinemax came out, man, it was showing the same crap every other day nearly. I was cooked in just 2 or 3 days, nothing left to watch again. Anyway, but I thought that was always like a curse. But I didn't realize that's also how spirit would communicate with me a lot too, because it doesn't seem like that's the same thing. Like, how would spirit use entertainment? But that it does work like that. So I'll use those references quite a bit. And this movie is one of them, I think. So anyway, go back to this. I'm gonna go back up and see what everybody's saying. If anybody, Candy Wolf, welcome. Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot, welcome. Millie, welcome back. Urso, what's happening? Ha, a lot of chats going on between everybody. Okay, I'm going to go back to current then. Just tell me, what all do you think? What are your thoughts on Starman? All right, I mean, it wasn't. I know it wasn't like a Leonard Maltin type of review that I did there, or what was those? What was those cats? They're both dead now. Siskel and Ebert. It's not a thumbs up, thumbs down type deal. Really, it's just what I think is worthy. What do they call it? Whatever Easter eggs or whatever, or worthy disclosure things about that movie. So going down to the current. Mm-hmm. Cool. Heidi Pop, what's up, Heidi? Welcome. Thanks for coming. Yeah, honestly, in the Starman, I think that Jeff Bridges gave a pretty good performance, and so did that lady. Because everybody remembers her only from being in the Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like 2 of them she was in, I think. Karen Allen. I personally, I got to be honest, I could never really get off on the Indiana Jones stories. They just didn't do it for me. I watched them all, but I wasn't just like, oh, Indy, go Indy. I mean, I wasn't. It didn't do it for me. It really didn't. Anyway, but Harrison Ford, I think, is a good actor though. But just those movies, like The Fugitive, that was a good one. I thought for a remake of something that used to be a series, that was a good movie. Anyway, somebody I saw something I said about Bigfoot and Wild Boy. Where'd that come from? Oh no, can't talk about that. Starman had the ability to heal, exactly, and the ability to reverse death. If you think about it, that deer was dead for a while. He went out there and brought that thing back at, I don't know, however long after it was already dead. And it kind of, when bringing that up, it kind of reminds me of one of those stories. I believe it's in Paramahansa Yogananda's book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. He talks about he healed this deer, and when he healed this deer, this wounded deer or something, he healed it and sent it on its way. And later on in his dream, the deer came to him and said, "Why in the world would you do that to me?" So I was out of here, man. I went through all that pain and I was out of here. Now you done brought me back. I had to go through all that again, and it was my time to leave. And it was the deal that he said. So he was emphasizing how to be careful you are when doing healings like that. I'm positive that was Paramahansa Yogananda in Autobiography of Yogi. He talked about that. And I kind of, when always reading that, it always made me think of that scene of Starman. You know what I mean? So anyway, just food for thought stuff, folks. I think also what Starman's represents is us dealing with metamaterials and how metamaterials is the way of the future also. They kept saying that the technology was 100,000 years more advanced than ours. I think that that was part of what they were trying to kind of show us too, and how it was about, I think their technology would have been not just ability to be psychokinetically molded, 3D printed, and things like that to protect their consciousness and advance their civilization, but it would also be a, yeah, very fascinating. It it kind of makes you think of, sometimes I'm sure you've all heard this before, how many souls are very anxious to get into Earth and get into these bodies because of our ability to feel the way that we, the sex, the food, the everything. It's like they really want to come in and get the feeling. And these other stages of existence with different containers for consciousness, you don't have that ability to feel like you do here in this 3D. That's been said quite a bit. You know what I mean? And that way there's a whole line of souls trying to come in here just basically to get their feel on, their senses on. And that's really all we are, is senses and feelings. When you start really going in and dealing with getting rid of these negative identity. Ooh, everything just flashed. Am I still here? Sorry. Um, when dealing with that, actually, God, where was I? I'm sorry. We're actually, I mean, we're like 100% feelings and emotions, and they're invisible. Okay, and but that is what we truly are, and we exist as more than anything else. As even more in the physical body, we are emotions, we are feelings, and it's as invisible as those voices people hear. It takes us into that whole realm of invisible awareness, invisible consciousness. Things that I mentioned earlier is that it's hard for people to understand. Something Ray Hernandez and I talked about a few times. I have his book in here somewhere. Mind of God is the other one, but the UFO book I don't have in here. There's this one I've shown many times. And him and I got to talking. That was probably the last time we talked on the phone. We were talking about beings and how a lot of people can't accept, because it takes us almost into a type of philosophy with all this. But it's a lot of these beings are coming from consciousness. And, it's a thing to where it's not just creator consciousness, but these makos that make up our universe, or these tunneling system of our universe, are storing that, these Akashic records. And I've said before, when you're dealing with the Akashic records and you're dealing with the mako, which is what they are, magnetically, eternally collapsing objects, and something goes through that aperture, okay, it creates that quantum hologram, that perfect copy that is stored in the mako. And that's what we call the Akashic records. And I've described many times how they're accessible through brain waves, okay. But point being, when you start actually dealing with civilizations that are about 5 million years more advanced than us, these things that they call type 4, type 5, that they're actually used in the fabric of the mako itself as their power source, they're probably no longer in existence. No longer in existence, not as we know it. All right. So that takes us into something that is, but they still exist within the mako, within the Akashic records, and they can still access us through the brain waves, make contact with us through the brain waves. And that starts taking us into the divine field as well. Some of these beings are coming through the divine field. And I swear to you, as I stand here and sit here and talk to you through cyberspace, a survivor of 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries sustained at one time, the divine field is real. I don't care what nobody says, it's real. And you've got real beings that come from it. And they're not dark in terms of this betrayal and all this crap we're dealing with here, but I encountered such that I call super nanofem during when I died, that I know were tuning it down enough to where I could even perceive them and not be burned up. But they were also channeling that direct creator force and the force of the people that really stopped and took a minute out of their day and prayed for me for real, not just saying it, that actually did it. I think they took all that psychokinetic energy and channeled it to me for my healing, to where you see me as I am now. That is what I think. So the divine field is real, but the problem is we get brain entrainment, and we're so susceptible to autosuggestion. And I've said that before. As a hypnotist, you don't understand how really truly susceptible people are to autosuggestion. And when I say that, people go into alpha state all the time, real quick. You know, for example, like probably, God, it's been 15 years ago by now, but when I had done like the last workshop I had done, the gentleman that did it was a master hypnotist. He was really good. He was a master at instant and rapid inductions too, and I respect that. Um, he had Mandela's up above where he's talking, and just above the line of sight, LOS. I got hip to it just like that immediately, and people were so taken by those Mandela that they were going into alpha state. And then later on, when he goes back over the stuff that we went over and like taking questions, I asked a few things, and people were looking at me. I don't remember him saying that. No, because he's in alpha state. I looked over. I said, "That's pretty good, man. I figured you were doing that to people." You know. Anyway, so it's just some people just unaware, but it's doing this. That's a visual visual inducement. It happens real easy. People go into alpha easy. Okay, so these little auto suggestions of things of, oh, super soldiers. This happened to this person is talking about it. It happened to me. You're exposed to hive mind type of stuff. Okay, that auto suggestion is powerful, and I've had clients that think they've had all that stuff happen to them, and some of it has. But when they start going to their experiences, they've had some of this positive stuff has happened too. Times they weren't assaulted. Times it didn't involve the G word. I don't want to get myself banned again. The G, the big brother, or these societies that are coming and doing these, that are tagging people before you're born. Then you're born, they start automatically manipulating your timeline, your life, your experiences, all that stuff. Now that definitely happens. I've had clients that have been through that too, and some of them were not ones that are into any of this type of stuff like that. But something happened. You had agency that's watching them, trying to influence what they're even encountering. You know, I had a client, one that talked about between lives, this regression was a life between lives, but when they were at the other lives, it was actually the place that were between made me actually take effect, because they were viewing actually even before that last life was done, who their parents are going to be on this planet and where they're going to incarnate. And this was in consensus with this type of team they're working with. And that's what this whole civilization did, was to bring people into harmony with like divine will, different civilizations. And that's what this person did with a team of other spirits. And they reincarnated. They're supposed to come to Earth and do that. Well, they got tagged as soon as they incarnated, and horrible trauma immediately to mess up everything, the way they would perceive everything. That's the stuff they're doing. That's the way they're targeting people. You know, so that's when I'm very aware of some of the stuff that happens, because I've done some of the work. So I don't ever want people to think that, oh, he doesn't believe in SSP. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying some of that is very much targeted individual stuff, and a lot of that is done from a hive mind. And it's not the same type of contact. It's not the majority of contact that is happening to people right now. But we're being led to believe it is, because the media, it's what sells. That's called disclosure right now. That's not full disclosure. Man, this is full disclosure. There's like 100 cases in here of healings. People that have been done similar to me, or stuff like me, or beyond me. And most of the people that listen to me, okay, have been through their own stuff. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time. I did a presentation for the John Mackey Experiences of Colors the other day. And it was, and it was, I was asking, why do you think that stuff happened to you and stuff? And What's your mission? All that. I'm not special. I've been saying since the beginning that I thought always around 80% of our population, 75, 80% of our population has had contact, and most are just unaware of it. And so far, being given this platform for whatever reason, nothing has happened to dissuade me of that information data-wise. It happens a lot, especially those conferences. You get somebody who really likes going to one, or they like being the subject, the information, and they'll come up to me like either when I'm speaking or afterwards. Oh, well, thanks, that was a great presentation or something. I really like this stuff. I've never had any experiences. And I mean, I'm already picking up on them when I stole the term from Dr. Who, Artron energy. It's an energy that when somebody is either around on one of these craft, okay, or around beings that are around these makos that are part of the engines of these craft and stuff, or around the beings themselves, they get irradiated with a certain type of energy. I think it's high energy that is a signature that I can detect on other experiencers, other contactees. And this person, when you looking at me and saying that they never had experiences, I'd be like, are you sure? You know what I mean? They're coming like, have you seen a UFO? Well, yeah. Especially, and I mentioned this before, one of the tell signs is, were there a few people around you? Could they see it? Maybe one person, but no. Or I didn't say anything because I didn't want to sound crazy. I don't know how nobody was saying anything. That right there is, during that brief time, you can get what I don't want to call them downloads. We call them uploads, because it happens on the superconscious level, the subconscious level, because those beings are on such a fast frequency, a fast vibration, that's the way it comes in. There's like even a time lag. And I'll ask him, a few days later, did you have maybe some weird dreams, weird people in your dreams, or being weird places? Well, yeah, matter of fact, I did. Stuff like that. That is contact. And the fact that we don't access our superconscious or subconscious unless we're in these hypnotic states is a shame. And I think that's the limiting factor that's really put on us as human beings while we're here. That's beyond just the agreement as immortal souls that we need to learn and progress more. There's a reason this stuff is to keep us here, like more like this is under Sith control here. As well as I do, this place is dangerous as an MF. This place is dangerous. It's predatory. And it shows you when you look at the ecosystems on this planet, they're highly predatory. And we're fools to think that the universe is not predatory in that way. Okay? So that's why I emphasize the divine field. It's good to get in line with it. Anyway, sorry. MPW 333, what's happening? Thanks. Sorry, I was going on one of my tangents. I don't even know what the heck I was. Beam me up. People beam me up. It's interesting because, what I found is, as immortal souls on the superconscious level, we have all agreed to come here. And it's like we have a choice to not even do it. I mean, I've tried to find the other part of this, doing these regressions. I'm not being able to find it. But then the fact is this: then we get here though, and it's so traumatic here, it's so dark here, and it makes it like this is a school. I mean, I'm sorry, this is the school of hard knocks. There's no way around that. You know what I mean? So in that way, a lot of people say, "Man, I'm never coming back here again." But be careful when you get to the other side and you're actually blissed out in your true form in terms of awareness wise, you might find that you're something totally different. You know what I mean? It's very interesting when dealing with that. But we're not the helpless things that we think when dealing with this. It's just this place sucks for those of us that have maybe been somewhere that's more utopia-like, or maybe more type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization, hell, even type 1. Because we go any lower than here, it'd be totally barbaric. You know what I mean? So it's true. One vibration lower than here, people be, there'd be barbarians everywhere. We'd be in the corners and stuff, man. It'd be horrible. You know what I mean? But a level above this would be something much more, hopefully, non-slavery, non-things like that. Something I want to throw in there before I wrap this up is that when dealing with kind of the love story part of Starman, which I'm not into that part, but dealing with how there was that type of a kinship happened between these two species. It reminds me of that story that Credo Mutua has told a few times about the woman that was gathering water for her family or whatever, and she turns around and her kid is she had once had a battle with a reptile or something, but she turns around and her kid is playing with an extraterrestrial. And the way this being wasn't quite, he didn't quite describe what the being type was so much, but that they're playing with these rocks, these glowing rocks, and they're just having the time of their life. These two kids playing with these rocks. And the first thing when the mother sees that and sees this playing with her kid, these two kids, thinks, "Oh my God, that's a monster! I got to get my kid away from this monster." And when she goes to go grab her kid, she gets stopped by the alien, the extraterrestrial's mother. And the mother says, "Look, I know," and telepathically, son, "Look, I know that y'all live in fear. Your society lives in fear. But just let them play. Just let them play." And so she did. And when it's done, they're taking their kids, and she says, "Keep those rocks. It's from my home world. And one day, when y'all are not living in fear and humanity and Earth advances, we'll come back, and all of our children will start playing together." I thought it was a great story. So in the mystery of necklace of mysteries that he had on, he said those rocks were in one of those containers in that necklace of mysteries that got stolen when he got beat up on that train or whatever happened. Anyway, assaulted. Oh, there goes the hour bell. Ah, it's the hour bell. Okay, it's been an hour, so we got through all the stuff. I look back over here. I'm trying to interact with the audience a little bit here, but it seems like you guys are kind of talking amongst yourself, which is really cool. Hi, Sunflower. How you doing? General Sorrow, what's happening? Mounty hunting. Bounty hunting bear. What's happening? So what do you all think about this real quick? Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up here. It's been an hour. I said I want to go a long time, but this has been great. But something I want to before we leave though, throw this out there. Okay, so I like listening to the stories about the encounters of Sasquatch, especially right now, and it's coming a point where social media has made it so much avail that people can just write in and just tell people, email people what's happening in encounters in a way they never could before. And it's amazing when you start hearing, especially these old people saying, "I never told anybody." Of course, those things are around. We never told anyone. We didn't want people coming around hunting for them. We didn't want people saying we're crazy, and all the reasons that these beings are not ever discussed. But some of the things we hear that I hear that are positive, and they're not cookie cutter. Gosh, this thing keeps flashing. I hope everything's all right. Anyway, one of the things is people taking a string of hair of someone who's injured and a piece of clothing, and this is something that some tribe was talking about, and they put it in a tree in a certain position in a certain place of a tree, and a Sasquatch will come get it and perform healing on the people from a distance. That was like really noticeable healing, and that's one of the things they can do when it comes to healing. Yeah. And like little items that they would leave for people that were sick, and the Sasquatch would come grab it from the tree and then heal them. I mean, I heard it a couple of times. I thought that was kind of cool, because we all know we got these gugwees that have been introduced to the population, I think, to discredit the type of Sasquatch that are clans that do that. These gugwees that I'm starting to hear more now are in they're not just solo hunters anymore. Starting to hear about them being twos and threes and little families. That was only recently. Before, when I first started hearing about Gugwe, but this been 10 years ago, there always seemed to be solo. Now I'm starting to hear about them in groups and them taking over places where, like that place in Paris, Texas, where there was that habituation going on, that there's actually getting taken over by Gugwees there, and they push the patty type out, And the Gugwies are people they're describing as being monsters, being complete monsters. And that's I think is something being introduced. And through the work I've done with Jessica Jones, we know that these facilities, they haven't stopped doing this chimeras and all this stuff they're producing. Some of them are in with, the G word, military factions and things. There's all sorts of stuff going on. How many times that in these regressions, I've had somebody dealing with these beings that were these humans that are in these black suits, these black uniforms. They're always described quite similar by different people. The suit itself kind of sounds to me something similar to, I got to get a little funky with y'all. If you remember the S1W, Security of the First World on Public Enemy, the way those brothers were dressed, they're kind of described as being dressed similar like that. And it's always kind of, to a degree, negative stuff that I hear concerning. I had a person, and this individual is quite interesting. This is somebody who was, like, of course, we'll never say who they are, but they're somewhat known in the communities, and they're one of those people that would tell me that they're not a contactee, but they think all this stuff is really cool. And they feel like a contactee big time. Big time. And it was actually Earthbound Spirit release. Take them even deeper than that, or so deep, and just take them through a regression. See if my hunch was correct. 100% correct. The individual starts describing going to a school, these different intervals that looked like a really abandoned mall on the outside. It's somewhere in California, they were saying too, and it's inside though it was completely all redone up to where a lot of the stores in there were these classrooms, and they describe being in several of these classrooms. I kept them under. I go through a few of them. In some of these classes, they describe sitting there with other civilians dressed like they are in normal clothes, but then there are also military officers in there. And some of them, what I think we would call maybe even gold bars to a degree. I think that's what that's called. And, and some of them are, and they're being instructed by a non-physical golden light being that is from Andromeda or somewhere or something. They're talking about being taught warp physics and stuff like that. And, that to me was just absolutely intense. And, I've heard that before from a lot of other people. Some people, SSP people, say something similar like that happened to them. This was different, but I'm a nosy cat, man. I'm inquisitive, so I started asking questions. Hey, do you see such and such there? Do you see such and such there? We went through like 5 different classes, and this is. I'm asking for people that we know that make these huge claims. Okay, that's why I'm not saying any names, but they have had all these experiences to make these huge claims, and of all people, in the situation that's being done in this mall, some of these classes this person is in, these cats should have been there. They should have been somewhere in there. And I ask all the names. No. See such and such? No. It's other more normal people like you and I. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just throwing that out there, right? And the superconscious doesn't lie. You know what I mean? And to that day, I know that person is really tripped out on all that. And when it was over and they're in normal consciousness, they told me, they said, Barry, I thought those were just these dreams I've been having. I was like, recurring dreams like that? Vivid recurring dreams like that all the time? Yes, I didn't, but they were like real. I see that. And when we get into the contact scenario like that, that's something else Ray and I had talked about. And I talked about this with Dr. Shields also, is that during the contact experience, we have also these different plasmas, high energy plasmas that interact with us and interact with our soul matrix, our energetic body or astral body, and it gives us the illusion of having physical. Oh, I'm still here. If y'all are still here, it gives us the illusion. That must mean I'm supposed to wind this down. It gives us the illusion of having physical contact. So we had talked about that. So in some of these situations, that could be happening too. That's not what happened to me. I know my stuff was physical due to the sickness I experienced. But it is another way to talk about how plasma could be used as a type of almost a type of an energy to actually create physical impressions, so to say. It could be used for that, actually, like almost a type of symbiosis with that particle synthesis with the experience itself could be done with us during that. So that's noteworthy. All right, things we can factor in with the experiences too. But at that point, it doesn't really matter, and it's about putting all this together. The different types of experiences, the ones that are positive, like the books I've talked about, like mine, these other people. And you know what? I completely forgot to show the Starman pictures. I'm sorry. It's no big deal. You can just get on YouTube or Google and look them up. It was just pictures of the ship itself. And something about that ship, the Starman ship, it was, hold on, let me see. I'm going to try. Let's try real quick. All right, I'm going to give this a try here. Let's see if we can do it. This is the mother ship. I'll try to show real quick, if I'm able. Okay, here it goes. This should be it. Thank you. There, you should be able to see it. Okay, there's the Starman, the mothership, and there's the probe. If you remember when the movie first began, I thought that was the most important part of the movie. When they actually show the Voyager probe, like I said, people was getting mad. You wouldn't be able to hear the Rolling Stones in space. Okay, yeah. But actually, it goes out there and it goes into a light portal, and then that thing comes out of a light portal, and that only looks dark like that because it's reflecting what would be, I think, actually Earth itself and space. Because actually, his ship didn't go very far before it went into the Earth's atmosphere. So that kind of tells me that they intercepted Voyager 2, like maybe out somewhere around the heliosphere, somewhere out there, and then they came on closer and then lost that thing not so far out. That's why at 3 days he was saying he had to meet them or they were going to leave. So that's something, and I think it takes us into that. And his main thing was he was coming here as a response. He didn't come here to propagate. He came here as a response to that probe, to the satellite, to Voyager 2. And I think just basically to see where we're at. That's like in terms of we're sending stuff out in space now. And he said they'd been here before and that we're an interesting species. So anyway, God, the fact I just got that done. You have no idea. That was the first time I've ever shared a picture during live. Oh my gosh. Soon I'm gonna come out of the Stone Ages and I'll be like in the medieval ages, trying to get to war games where Matthew Broderick was. M13. If you've been through that, I mean, go undertake it in do a regression. That'll tell you. If you think you've been through the MELAB stuff and all that, that'll tell you. It also, if you get a good hypnotist, it can show also if you're a target individual that's getting hit with either sound weaponry or microwave spotlight or something like that as well. Havana syndrome. All that stuff is going on right now, and not just that. There's dream technology they're hitting people with that turns dreams into memories and those memories into reality. That's something they're definitely doing. So it's worthy of finding out about that if you've been through that type of stuff, or if you've had encounters of the other type, or is it something that you've had that you heard from somebody else and it's brought it in? Because anyway, that's the way to find out. Ask yourself, because the superconscious has recorded everything the immortal soul has gone through, and we can still access it in this body when you're in heightened awareness, or AKA Delta, Deep Theta, Delta states. Let's see. MPW 333. Barry, why was Starman on Earth in the first place? He came in response to the Voyager 2 probe. That's why he came. At the very beginning, you show it. They're looking at the probe and they're saying that people got mad. That's not exactly how that was. It was just a record. Whatever, man. But they're just movies. But he came in response to Voyager 2. They've been here before. Then we'd reached another step. And I think it's kind of like how a Bracewell probe comes into a solar system and it waits. That was what they showed on 2001. That monolith that was a Bracewell probe, came into our solar system. One was on the moon, then one came to Earth, and the monkeys were jumping around it and all that stuff. And it waited for us to turn into a type 1 civilization almost and start going into space. And then that's when the Bracewell probe started communicating with us. Or AKA, I guess it started communicating with Hal first. But anyway, that was remember that movie. You let me in, Hal. I can't do that, Ben, or whatever his name was, John. I can't do that. What are you talking about? I can't let you deactivate me. You thought you deactivated where I couldn't hear you, but I was reading your lips. Old Hal. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, that was Starman's whole deal. I think he was just, and like he called even the craft they destroyed, he called it an observation craft. And you notice when he talked about that meteor crater, he called it Area 1, Landing Area 1 is what he had called it. And it was odd how the ship was about the same size of that crater, which I think is, you have to look up how big is that crater. That's a real crater place, but that ship was about the size of that. So I think that qualifies as a mothership, definitely. Huh. See a lot of talk about MeLab and all that stuff. That's cool. But nobody talking about healing. Who in the group has been healed during an encounter and had technology exposed to healing and positive things that have happened? Not all contact is negative experiences, and the fact that, we're dealing with that. I spent a long time, because when I was trying to figure out my own encounters, I've spent so much time hearing nothing but that when looking towards the media, looking for people having experiences. It was just all that type of stuff I was hearing about, not this type of stuff. This is the first time I've heard anybody talking about this is in Preston's book here. I was wondering why I can't hear it. So it was very disturbing for me because, one, I wasn't hearing about experiences like mine. Two, none of the contactees looked like me. None of them was melanin dominant, except for like Barney Hill. Okay. Then number three, then the information is not at all like what I'm looking for. It's not what I'm going through. So that was very and then four, do any of the extraterrestrials look like me? Those four things are very discouraging, okay, and nerve-wracking as well. So that's just something why I bring that up a little bit. So people have had the different experiences need to come forward as well. It's not as skewed as what we're told there. And the realizing that, anyway, I'm gonna leave that where it is because it's such a popular deal right now. I'm not going to touch any more than that. I've dealt with it. Like I say, when people are talking about that and you think you've been through that, they get regression. Find somebody that is a good regressionist that isn't going to give you autosuggestion like what I've seen in some of the methods being done right now. And when I say autosuggestion, is they're like, you're in a ship now. What are you seeing? This is stuff like that. Shouldn't have to do that. You've had experiences. Just saying, I just see a lot of deception going on in things in the communities. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm gonna wrap this up. Josephine, how you doing? Thank you for coming. Thank you. Jessica's here. What's up, Jessica? I think you'll be able to make it. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm about to wrap this one up actually, because I actually got all the information out, and I think everybody got to talk about the movie amongst themselves. You know, there's some other movies. If this goes over well and people enjoyed this, sometimes maybe I'll do like some other, whatever you want to call them, Easter eggs or whatever from some of the other movies. One, like, for example, I was just talking the other day with a friend, Brother from Another Planet. In fact, it came up a couple of times the last few days. Brother from Another Planet with Joe Morton. And that was Joe Morton killed that role. It was very well done. A lot of people, who's Joe Morton? He's the one that created the Cyberdyne, and Terminator was a Terminator 2, and he had the thing where he had a thing up there. He blew up everything. Yeah. He was also on Smallville. He played the brother who was trying to figure out the kryptonite. He's using too much meteorites and meteor rock juice that was tearing him up, like making him mutate and having some sort of a convulsions and stuff. He's a pretty good actor. I think he was also in that movie and that TV show Eureka. Eureka was pretty cool. I didn't watch all of them, but it was a pretty interesting show, you know. Anyway, sorry, but anyway, things like that. If stuff like this goes over, we can do other entertainment references, you know. And I think some of them that go back to right now is a good one. Somebody was just mentioning that they've been exposed to the dream tech. You know, the first time I'd even seen the concept of that was on one of my favorite movies of all time, Dreamscape. And Dreamscape, at a point in that movie, they talked about the machinery, but how that was just used to connect the brain impulses. It's the psyche that did everything else. And it wasn't long at all before Dennis Quaid figured out how to do it without the machines. And that's kind of what that movie was all about, you know. But I mean, we know that we have that second hand for beings that are beings of perception and beings of awareness. We have inorganic beings that jump in our field of awareness all the time. And a lot of times we can only discern them in the dream state because they're using the phantasmagorical images of our electron impulses. And a lot of times those beings will show up as what, like Castaneda called allies, which will be odd things in your dream. The first time that happened to me, I was unaware I was dreaming awake at first. And then when I realized that, I was this, like, for me, as in my apartment, it was this Ming vase was on the glass table, and I had broken that glass table. That started triggering stuff, but it's sitting there just fine, all shined up, and this Ming vase on the top. And I said, look at the thing. I was like, man, that's like a first dynasty. My God, that thing's worth like what, $10 million or something? It's just sitting up here in this apartment in the middle of no alarm or nothing, and it started triggering that this wasn't right. And that's when I started becoming aware that I was dreaming. I'm not a lucid dreamer like that, but once I did, I started focusing, doing a gazing technique on that Ming vase, and it turns into like an pink energy ball, goes into the wall and it's gone. Okay, now if I was a skilled dreamer at that time, I could have followed that being into the wall and into its realm or wherever it was going. But that's dangerous. You mess around and get trapped doing that. But that's one of the things that there. And the other thing would be the other inorganic beings, the negative ones, the ones that project voices and are these horrible dark entities or whatever you want to call them, evil. They come into your dream and they show up as people you know and love. And they start harassing you, torturing you while you're in the dreamscape. You come and say, God, why would my dad ever do that? This thing's going to go down. Anyway, you say, why would my dad ever do that to me? Why would my mom ever do that to me? It's those beings doing that to rile up your emotion so they can feed. The loose, Jessica, everybody calls it now, the negative psychokinetic energy, or as I like to call it, deadly orgone radiation, DOR. That's what they're feeding on, definitely. But they're getting you riled up in that state there and depleting you. Same way they try to jump in people when you're awake and you got a loved one, you know how to shield yourself a little bit. They're going to cause you financial stress. They're going to start jumping into your loved ones and go for the heart chakra. If they can get into your shields, just crack it a little bit, they'll go into the heart chakra. That's not what they go for. And the best way to do that is to jump into a loved one who doesn't know how to protect themselves and doesn't even believe the stuff we're talking about right now is real. They're easily used. Easily used. And you notice something before I get out of here. You all notice how the attacks are up right now. People are attacking each other and they're trying to demean people, discredit people. Some people are using biorhythm technology, these apps and stuff, and trying to do aura reads on people. Look, they're all messed up. Black goo, all this stuff. I'm seeing all sorts of weird stuff happening. And, it's these attacks going on and attempt to really stop us from going forward any more than we have with this whole thing that is a shift in consciousness. Don't fall for it, Keep your shields up. Like Jessica says, what is it? Keep your head on a swivel. Keep your shields up. Keep your awareness up. Keep your discernment high. You'll be all right. Cool. Well, thank you all for being here. Dreamscape was a project that was Hollywoodized and fiction, but it's a real thing. Not very much Hollywoodized at all. Have you read Penetration by Ingo Swann? That's exactly what he was doing. He was doing what the Dr. Novotny, Max von Sydow, was doing on psychics. He's not just making remote viewing, but that's not not untrue. So, everything as far as information goes, and right now is only now they really got that dream tech going on. That's something that started happening around then. It wasn't really as much preview to then as people were saying. That was in '84. So you're dealing with real dream tech going back probably 10 years before that. But yeah, that's actuality stuff that's being done. And right now I've done a whole video over what's called targeted dream incubation. So the videos I put out that people don't really look at. Check that out. I mentioned some of the companies that are actually transparent in the public sector right now that are using that technology. So, and when dealing with that, the people that say they're having some of these experiences, when that's happening, that's not the same as having a real physical experience or having experiences with beings from the divine field. That's stuff that's being done to people. It's induced, and it's humans doing it. And I can tell you that doing these regressions, this is stuff happens after you incarnate here. That's when the attack starts. When you get in this body, and they can start molding your perception, influencing you, giving other people stories. You hear this person's story. Oh gosh, that just triggered something. That happened to me. That's a hive mind. They're doing that big time on people. I want people to know that is not necessarily quote unquote disclosure. That is a rewriting of a narrative. We already know how much of the encounter scenario is negative just based on the fact that we're dealing with an alien agenda. But then when you look at what our own people that run our planet do, how much more demonic can it get than that? I mean, goodness. Seriously, keeping it 100. because that stuff that's happening there, the clients I've had that have dealt with that, and it, and I don't, the labs, you've got the Me Lab, the DARPA. I think some of these agencies, like these dudes in the black, I don't think we really know who they are. I was talking about. I don't think it's one of these agencies that's been really revealed. Like, for example, the agency that is, oh gosh, what's the name of it? That anybody that finds anything that might possibly be a non-terrestrial Earth object that's so sentient, they have to throw it through this council. It's this council that no one's ever heard of. I did a video over that and showed the sticker, the patch that those people use. It's a council people never heard of. Well, who are these people? They're the ones that anybody, NASA, any space organization on Earth has to pass this stuff through them before it can be released to the public. It's some sort of a censor committee, and it's got a patch. God, I should look for it. I'll do another time. I've got a video up about it. It might be on my Channy video, or maybe, gosh, man. Solar simulator video. Sorry, I'm not sure now. Anyway. Using it to target Gorbachev. What's that? Sound weaponry or what? Huh. Sounds like everybody kind of got the thing out. Yeah, people are mean. I deal with that. I agree with that. People are vicious. Well, hey, thank you all for coming. All right, and I appreciate you all. I'm going to sign off. Let me know if this was cool, if it was worthwhile. Maybe I'll do something similar to this again sometime for another movie that has a lot of gems in it. All right, or some subject that has gems in it that's just worth thinking about as far as us dealing with a different type of contact, a different species, especially one that is non-corporeal. All right, I think that's important and just the main part of this whole movie and what we were talking about there and how we would deal with other species and how we become back to a type 1 civilization. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. Much love. Have a good rest of your evening, Sunday. Eat some good food. Take care of yourself. Enjoy your life. Peace. Don't think I know what I'm doing there. Rita Mills, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think I got it right now. M13, everybody still left. Thank you. William Linez. Thank you for coming, everybody. You enjoyed it. Please do more. Thank you. Okay, cool. So somebody like this. Okay, thank you. I didn't even know that. I mean, the spirit pushes me to do this stuff, and you have no ideas. I'd be tripping, man. I would do a lot of those videos on my channel. I was like, I can't believe they want me to talk about this. I just went with it. I went with all of it. You know what I mean? But I know because and they always bring up that it's important that some of the non-cookie cutter stuff comes out. You know what I mean? Because we've all heard about cloning a lot. So this involved cloning, a different type of cloning that's like maybe takes us into the realms of some of the things that we've heard about, some of that more advanced technology that some of those grays even have, that they can almost make rapid cloning, not quite like what we saw in that movie, but something close to that. You know what I mean? And the fact that they're dealing that, and who knows what just humanity can do by now. I'm sure they're at that point. But these other civilizations, it's a matter of how quick can they do a rapid clone to that degree, to what they showed there. I thought that was kind of cool. Just food for thought, if nothing else. So anyway, cool. So thank you all. Bounty Hunter, thank you all for being here. Alleviated, Alvita. Sorry, I'm bad with names. Thank you. Just waking up. Thank you for coming. Urso, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Gosh, I think that's everybody. Jessica, I don't know if you're still here. Thank you for stopping in. And as usual, encouraging me to do this. general. Thank you all. Okay, thank you all. I'm pressing out now, and God bless, and talk to you all soon. Peace.